we are live and with Shelly Culbertson right now. Shelly is one of my favorite coaches, trainers, just real estate rock stars. What I love about Shelly is that she's just not talking about it. She's actually doing it. She's living it. And that's a whole different thing for a lot of these so-called coaches that have never really sold successfully, or they're not selling now successfully. So this is really powerful information. I'm dressed down today because I'm in my got my eight-legged freaks behind me because we're setting up an Easter egg hunt at one of my RV parks. So we're just having some fun. But Shelly's gearing up to go to Italy, so she's carving out some time for us today. Thank you, Shelly. But Shelly, you gave me a few great ideas, and you just have given everybody great ideas. But I know you told me before we started that you've created 15 transactions since January. And we're still in a super hyper competitive market. And I think today is a great day to talk about how you're coaching your buyers for success when they're competing with multiple offers and higher interest rates and everything else that's going on in the world. Let's walk through that process. How do you do that?
Yeah, when this market started happening last year with the multiple offers, and it was just such a challenge with buyers, we really analyzed the way that we do business and made it a really strong focus that we've got to prepare our buyers to enter into this market. And like you were saying, we've had 15 offers accepted since January 1st. And I think that's really huge in this market.
Yeah.
But what we know is that confused buyers make confused decisions, and ultimately they don't win out on offers and they don't buy.
Right.
So really what we've kind of come up with is the sense that we've got to get the clarity to our buyers. So when they enter the market, they're very clear on a few things. They're very clear on what their offer is going to look like. And they're very clear that, am I going to jump into that arena on that house? No, I can't put forth an offer that's going to get accepted. So let's go find the next house. So, and for us, it's kind of a concept of two different ways of looking at it. One of them, showing a buyer is better than telling. So that's kind of our underlying theme. Whenever we're trying to educate our buyers, we're trying to figure out, instead of us telling them what they need to do, how do we show them what's going on in the market so they can make the choices they need to make to enter into the market.
Brilliant.
So it all starts with what we call a buyer's process. We sit down and do a buyer's consultation with every buyer, no matter how experienced they are.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I think there's a fear point with agents, like saying, hey, I want to sit down with you and talk to you, because most agents' default is, let's go look at homes. So how do you frame that conversation, especially with an experienced buyer, to get them like, okay, slow down, let's sit down and have a conversation? What do you say to people?
And I will start to question them when they first come into my world. And I will ask them, are you prepared to jump into this market? And I'll ask them, what have they heard about our current market? This is before I even talk about the houses they're interested in. And the majority of people out there the answers are, well, I've heard that it's a tough market, interest rates are rising, that there's multiple offers. And I will say to them, yes, in the aspects of the market, that is the market we're in. And my job is to get you ready to enter into that market. So when you find your dream house, we're able to be successful to get you in it.
I love that. Everybody should write that down. What have you heard about this market? That's a great way to get into their mindset, where they're at. Great idea.
That's actually our favorite. When somebody comes, I don't know how many times I hear it. What do you think of the market, or how's the market? My favorite thing to answer back is, what have you heard?
Answer a question with a question.
Yes.
I love
yes.
It.
And then they get looped in, you don't even know it. But that's how we are, because we want them in a way it's a better way of saying showing rather than telling. Because if you came in my world and said, I want to go see this house, then immediately if I start telling you how the market is and telling you need to meet with me, it's the big no-no.
And I think another word for telling for a lot of people would be, if you replace that word telling with selling. People feel like they're being sold. Nobody likes to be sold, but everybody likes to buy. So I think this is a great example of that.
Yeah, it is. And I'm always one that, and I have a word of the year, it's curiosity. And that just reminds me that I don't have to tell people things. All I've got to do is ask the questions and get their mind to work, and they find the answer.
Yeah.
Big difference in a mindset shift. Well, so then we get them in, and we actually have them come in for a consultation. And the biggest things that we're trying to accomplish here are educating them on kind of the contract and what it's like to enter into this market. So we had a discussion earlier that one of the biggest angst that's going on with the buyer is they want to live in a certain area and they want to pay a certain amount. And we, as the agents, know that, for example, in our area, if you want to live in East Medford, you got to basically be able to pay more than $400 to $450 to be able to enter into that market.
Right.
So if someone comes in our world and they say, we want to live in East Medford and we're qualified up to $375. Well, I know that that's not going to work in that market. But if I tell them that, then they might leave my world and go to another realtor because I'm not.
They're going to resist it, right? Because they're going to think, I just find a realtor who will find it, which I think
exactly
is, right?
It's the unicorn. I call it the unicorn.
Right.
So first thing that we kind of adopted is what we call solve for price. And what that is we do an exercise with them and we really dig down to what they want in a house. And when we dig into what they want for a house, then we go to the multiple listing service and we put those parameters in the criteria. So for example, Jim, if you were the buyer that came in my world and you said, I got to live in East Medford and I need 3 bedrooms, I need 2 baths, I need 1,800 square feet, and I can't pay more than $350. So then I would go in and I would go to the MLS search. I would put all that criteria in except for the $350. And then what I'll do is I'll run the actives, pendings, and solds, and I'll print them out. And then I'll put it across the table and I go, well, to buy the house, the dream house you want in East Medford, this is what it's going to take. Beautiful. And I'll have a look at the houses and they will look at me and go, well, the cheapest house on there is $425. I go, you know what? It sure is. So we have one of 2 options. You can either, we go back to the drawing board and we find some more money, or we get the lender to get you to $425, or we got to change something in the criteria over here.
I love that. That is beautiful. What a brilliant approach, because it forces them to pivot on their expectations rather than you trying to fulfill an expectation that can't be filled, because ultimately they'll be frustrated or upset or they'll hire another realtor, which is just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And the piece, when I say the pendings and the solds too, because when we look down at those solds, sometimes certain neighborhoods, they're getting more than asking price. When you agree?
Right. Yeah.
So if you look down at the solds and you see that the average house is getting 105% of what the asking price is, well, then $425 is not going to cut it for you. Because if you want to win the offer, you're going to have to come in closer to $450, maybe $460 to win an offer in a multiple offer situation.
Right. And so it just shows the conversation that has to happen, right? I love it.
And I love the fact with something like that, it's so visual. It's not, again, I go back, I'm not telling them. I'm showing them and they're looking at it and they're coming to their own conclusions, decisions that, okay, maybe I need to buy over here in Southwest Medford first. And we start there, and in 3 years, let's go over to East Medford.
Right.
When I fill
Stepping
that
stones. Yeah. Great. So that's the first step in your consultation?
Yes, that's one of the first steps. Actually, the first step is we dive in and do what we call features and benefits. And it's, what are you looking for in the house? Why are you looking for it? Which is something interesting. I kind of go on a rabbit trail here. So an example I like to use is that we don't go to the hardware store to buy the drill. We go to the hardware store because we need a hole in our wall. So the drill is what gets us the hole in the wall,
tool, right? Yeah.
So if you're my buyer and you go, I want to live on a golf course. So I'll go, okay, do you play golf? And you go, no, I don't play golf. Well, why do you want to live on a golf course? Well, because I don't have a neighbor behind. And it always looks nice when I look outside. So my question is that I'd probably ask you, well, how would you like to back up to Woodland Reserve, where you're looking at a forest?
Right.
How would you like to live on a lake? So there's not just living on a golf course is putting it in a box, and the average realtor would go in the MLS and go, give me golf course properties.
Yep, exactly. That's interesting. I read a book I can't remember the name of the book, but they talked about the five whys, which is the five whys, which is kind of a similar, like why, and they get behind it, why, and you drill down into what's really causing them to this or that. But that's exactly what you're talking about, which I love. It's super smart.
Yeah. So that's actually the first part of our process, and we have a lot of fun with it because we really drill into what a family wants. Then we kind of lead into the MLS, and that's where we do those searches and see what we can find. And then once we kind of have that search set up and they're ready to go look at houses, and this is the piece that we really have worked on a lot in the last, I would say, 6 to 8 months, is then we go, how well do you understand the contract? Because our contract is, I don't know how many pages now, 15?
A lot.
It's a lot of pages.
Yeah.
Well, I go, well, are you okay if I walk you through? There's really 5 points in the contract we really need to concentrate on. And with that, what I'd like to do is write out on a piece of paper so you're really clear when you enter in the market what it's going to look like to write an offer.
Love it.
So I take them to the five, I call it the 5 negotiating points in the contract. And the first one is always price. So the conversations I have with them around price, it's not so much that you're going to get a deal right now, but what it is that list price is sometimes the starting price.
Yes.
So when we look at a house and you decide that I really like this house, I want to move forward with it, we're going to have a discussion around what's a no regrets offer. And what that is don't so much look at the sticker price on it, but what I want you to think about is what is the most amount I'm willing to pay for a house. And if I don't get it, it wasn't the house for me. I'm not going to lose sleep.
That's the no regrets. I love it.
And no regrets. And I have that conversation. This is what I love about having it up front rather than having it when we're in the heat of the market. So this is why I love to say, we're going to go slow right now. So when you walk in that house, you're going to look at me and you're going to go, no regret is $475. Let's do it.
Great.
Rather than trying to have that conversation. And now you look like a salesperson.
Now you're selling. Yeah. Yep. I love it. You're less of a consultant, than you're a salesperson. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will take the piece of paper and I'll go offer price and we'll talk about, and I'll sit there and talk to him right then. What's the max amount you want to pay for a house? I want to write that number down. And then I'll go to the second negotiating point, which is terms. And now terms will encompass a whole bunch of stuff. So if they're getting a loan, what we discuss about with terms is, well, even if they're paying cash, earnest money. And we have to, do you understand what earnest money is?
Yeah.
Do you understand how we're going to protect your earnest money along the way? Or your other option is you can make it non-refundable out of the gate. It's your call. But we talk about those risks around earnest money right then and there. Yeah.
And the competitiveness. Sometimes you have to do that to be competitive.
Yeah. Yep. I coach some people up in the Seattle market. I'm just dumbfounded. And there's another, it's Seattle market. I think Georgia's the other one. They just scratch a check for 10 grand just to enter the market. I'm like, right.
Non-refundable.
I'm glad I'm in Bedford.
We're not quite there yet.
Yeah, exactly. But, and so then with terms, our conversation, I actually start with down payment. And with the down payment conversation, it will parlay into the appraisal conversation.
Gotcha.
So the strength of your offer is based on how much you're bringing in to put down. So let's say you have $150,000 to put down on this transaction. Well, you might be offering over more than what it's going to appraise for. My question is, do you still want to buy that house? Because if you still want to buy that house, we can put some verbiage in there that says you're willing to pay above a certain amount over appraised value.
Appraisal gap, right?
So we have that conversation. That's all in terms.
And are you price in terms? You talk about escalation clauses at that point. Yep. I'm assuming. Yep.
I hit escalation clauses. We also touch on the different loan programs. I mean, for example, a VA loan program. Sometimes they don't understand you can still bring money to the table and put money down on a VA loan.
Right.
And here's where. Go ahead.
No. Or a seller may look negatively at a VA loan,
Yep.
so they may want to go conventional. So
Mhm.
went out. Yeah.
Exactly. And here's where, I mean, we hope when we're sitting down with them, they've already visited a lender.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they haven't visited a lender, then I pretty much ask, what kind of cash do you have on hand? And at this point, you can look all you want online, but we're probably not going to go look at houses until you get pre-qualified, because I'll tell you, the house you fall in love with today may not be there tomorrow. And if you're not pre-qualified, you're always going to remember the house you wish you could have bought.
How do you deal with a person that is pre-qualified with like Quicken Loans or one of these, places like that, Rocket Mortgage or something?
So I love that question. So again, showing is better than telling.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of telling them, no, I go, can I share a story about an experience I had with Rocket Mortgage?
I love it.
And then I'll even ask another question. Have you tried to call Rocket Mortgage yet? Has everything been online?
Right. Good luck.
And if they've called, have you talked to the same person twice?
Good call. I love it. Yeah.
So it's just asking. And then I say, can I share a story of local lenders?
Mm-hmm.
We have Guild in our office. And if I've got a question on a transaction, I can go sit at Heather's desk and go, Heather, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I love it.
Mm-hmm. So again, I just educate them and let them make the decision. And I also share that too with how a seller's perception of Rocket Mortgage versus a local lender is.
Yeah, it can definitely put you at a competitive disadvantage for sure.
Yeah. So then we've done pricing, and in terms is usually the one that takes the longest to go through because there's so many different options you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But so at the time we discuss all the terms piece, then I'm narrowing it down. And my question is, after we've had this conversation, okay, so your offer highest end, you're going to go is 475. And in terms, you have 150 to put down and you're willing to pay an appraisal gap to a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it all down on paper. So they're very clear as to what it's going to look like when they jump into that arena.
I love it. So they have super clarity. I love the clarity.
Yes, it is. It's huge. And so the next one is contingencies.
Mm.
So we walk through the whole gamut of inspections. Mm-hmm. Because unless they have a house to buy, that's a whole nother conversation. I mean, a house to sell, that's a whole other conversation. But if the majority of this with the buyers we work with, it's about inspections. And you have different options, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
waive them. Yeah.
Contractor in the family that wants to walk through it and look at it, and we can waive inspections. Well, that's your best recourse.
Right. Absolutely.
But I also let them know that if you choose to waive the inspections, you will be signing a piece of paper that says we've had numerous conversations about the risk involved with that. Mm-hmm. Because I want them to make the decision, because some people are willing to waive an inspection.
Absolutely, especially in this market. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And we also will discuss an inspector's job, because mm-hmm. sometimes I love the listing agents that do the inspection ahead of time.
Yeah, pre-inspection.
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about what that looks like. They already had an inspection done. You're more than welcome to call that inspector and have them come back out and look at things and make sure mm-hmm. stuff was done. But we also talk about the liability of the inspector. I mean, all of that, it's open conversation. Again, we're having it before they jump into that market.
I have a question just on terms of forms. My first class where I earned my ABR designation, and if you mm-hmm. haven't earned it, you should go earn it, the accredited buyer representation class. I later taught it for NAR, but my instructor was a guy named Brian Hall, and great instructor. But he had this method when he was doing kind of the consultation like you, where he would actually give people a copy of the offer, which I thought was pretty brilliant. He didn't actually go line by line through it, which would be super boring, but he would give it to them to destigmatize it. Do you do the same thing?
No, what I do is I give them this piece of paper with the 5 bullet points.
Okay.
That's something I do prior to, when someone comes to my world and we're going to have a buyer's process, I mm-hmm. have an electronic version of a form already filled out.
Got it.
And I give them that to review. But what's really interesting, Jim, is, and this is a whole different conversation, but there's different personality types. And if you can clue in as to what a personality type is, perfection people will want to read that contract page by page by page.
For sure.
A power person is going to love this bullet pointed thing.
Mm-hmm.
A peace person just wants to make sure there's nothing wrong with the house.
Right.
And a party person just wants to paint and decorate.
Just give me to the housewarming party.
Exactly. But it's very interesting because you got to meet people with those personality types. If you have a perfection person, and I know a perfection person's coming in, I'm going to have that contract sitting there for them.
Yeah, then they can review it. That's interesting. Yeah, taking it to the personality type. That's smart. I like that.
Mm-hmm. So we've kind of hit contingencies. I don't want to go down the contingencies if they have a house to sell, because I'm actually addressing that at listing consultation.
Yeah.
So, and that could be a whole nother podcast.
Whole nother thing. Yeah. For sure. A long time.
So the other one is dates, and dates is very interesting. And what I express to them, so the way we do business, the minute I know a buyer wants to present an offer, I am reaching out to that listing agent and I am asking them, aside from price, what is a dream offer for your client?
Mm.
And I will get, because some price is not the most important thing.
Sure. Yeah.
In this market, it's pretty important, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
If they've got to move to Georgia and they need 2 weeks to be able to make that transition, we might win the offer because we made the phone call and my buyer's willing to give them 2 weeks possession.
What's really interesting about what you said there too is I think that's a huge value point we offer to buyers. As we say, a lot of agents won't call the listing agent, and I receive a ton of offers where they never call me, and I just get it in my inbox. It's terrible, but our job is to interview the other agents, see if there's anything we can figure out, and that's exactly what you're doing. It's a huge value point, I think.
Yeah, that is a pet peeve of mine. One of the top 5 is when I have a listing and the offer comes in and I don't get a phone call that it's there.
Crazy, right?
What are you doing as a realtor?
Who are you representing here? It's terrible.
Yeah. So I walk them through at this point what dates look like, and if they are concerned about, okay, if I have to give them 2 weeks, how am I protected? I make sure I get that agreement to occupy after closing in their hands, because that will give them clarity that I'll be okay to give them 2 weeks then.
Yeah. I have a question just in general in our competitive market. Do you give sellers a few days after closing, just as like, I'm pretty much always giving people 2 or 3 days or 5 days, or what's your kind of MO on that?
For me, it depends on the phone call, because if the agent on the other side, I will prompt the question, where are your sellers going? Do they need a day or 2?
Got it.
If the house is vacant, there's
no
need.
Yeah.
They want it to close in 2 weeks.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So yes, and like I said, everything is, well, that depends. But I would usually encourage, let's close on a Thursday and let's give you possession on a Monday.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
More competitive.
So the last one is inclusions, exclusions. Pretty much in this market, don't ask for it.
Right. Right.
But the other sense of clarity with people is, it varies from state to state too. Is the refrigerator included? Is the washer and dryer included? What's personal property versus the stove? There's some states where the stove is not included. Go figure.
Yeah.
So I just walk through, do you know what personal property is? And do you know what personal property isn't? So we'll talk around that.
And the weird, unique things like Ring doorbells and, the things that we got today are different.
Yep, exactly. So what the goal is by the time we get through this conversation, they're leaving with a piece of paper as to what that offer is going to look like that they're going to write. So then when we're out looking, the only thing I really have to look at them and say is, what's your no regret pricing on this house? I already know how I'm going to put the offer together. So
much easier. So much cleaner and more powerful and faster, because you're not selling at that point.
It's so true. And like I said, you got to go slow to go fast. And I always ask the question at the very end. So when we go through our process, because I want to know where's their head at this point, where are they with commitment level? And it also lets me know, is there something they're not clear on? So the last question I always ask them is, okay, if we go out and find the house you want to buy tomorrow, what are you going to do? And my goal is, because we've gone through this process, that they're looking at me going, oh, I'm going to write the offer we just put together right here.
I love it. Now you've got a real buyer, right?
Now you have a real buyer.
You got somebody that's ready to pull the trigger. I have a question. Are you using, and maybe it's just this conversation, But are you using a buyer, like a listing presentation for a buyer or no?
Well, yeah, I am my buyer's guide
Love it. Okay. Awesome. So
because showing is better than telling.
right. And it's something they can take with them, right? So
Yes.
they're getting their own
Yeah.
time.
And it has everything. So it has our resume in here.
Mm-hmm.
I love getting my resume in people's hands because I don't have to sit there and tell them how good I am.
Right.
They can read it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, between that and the client testimonials,
Yep.
you will hit every single personality type. The peace and party people want to know that people like you.
Yeah.
But the power and perfection people want to know you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Do you send that to them before your meeting? Does he send
Yes, I have a digital form also. So usually what I'll do is I'll send it to them digitally.
Mm-hmm.
And when we meet up for the buyer's process, I'll ask them if they had a chance to review it.
Got it.
And if they haven't, I always bring these in along with the contract. And obviously, the first thing I cover is my agency disclosure pamphlet.
Of course.
The principal broker in me.
So I have a question for you, and I think this is right on the tip of everybody's tongue. Everybody's talking about it. Is interest rates, and how does that play into this whole conversation? Is that something you're talking about? I mean, how are you dealing with it? I'm sure you are.
Well, I will ask, and sometimes that will come up in the conversation with price when I'm talking about no regrets pricing.
Right.
And so I will throw it right out there right now. Okay, if you've met with the lender, what interest rate are they kind of quoting you right now? So if that interest rate goes up, which you understand you're losing this much in buying power. Right. And I will put straight numbers to it because it'll create a sense of urgency with them.
That's an interesting way to look at that, is actually creating that sense of urgency by, we often think about that in reverse with sellers, like it's price versus time, but this is the same in reverse for buyers, which I think is brilliant. That's smart.
But yeah, we'll cover that in that pricing and terms piece when we're talking about all of that. Because if they've been pre-approved, I'm usually asking them, what were you pre-approved at? What was the interest rate? And what taxes did they put in for you? Because we'll also have, if you have a first-time home buyer, somebody who hasn't bought in a long time, we'll discuss, because in our town, as you know, Central Point's taxes are much higher because of their school add-on stuff. As to maybe Southwest Medford, or a newer home versus an older home.
Right.
And so that does play a big part. And sometimes when I'm talking no regrets pricing too, I'm asking them, what's the max that your monthly budget can take? So
it's interesting you said that. I was in the car with a really high level developer yesterday, and he said the same thing. He said, most buyers are not price buyers. They don't really, they think in terms of price, but most people are payment buyers. And it's all about, well, can I afford $2,000 a month or $2,500 a month? And that's what they're looking at. We as realtors always think about price, but a lot of it's all payment for them, which is really smart, what you're talking about there.
And you know where I learned that from? With the car salesman. Because if you think about it, that's how they work.
Yeah, they sell payment
a month.
Yeah.
We'll sell you the car for $150,000, but it's only going to cost you this much a month for the next 20 years.
Exactly. That's funny.
Yeah, but it's a very real thing for people, because they're budgeting that way. And I really encourage realtors that are on here today. If you do not have an app on your phone, talk to your mortgage lender and get one. The way we work it is, when somebody is in the house, I can pull up right then and there what their payment is going to be in that house before we walk out right the offer.
Beautiful. Then you're selling the payment, not the price. So smart. That's $1 million strategy right there. Great idea. So Shelly, always fantastic, incredible, really good information. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. If somebody wants to get a hold of you or contact you or be coached by you, how would they find you?
Phone number 541-621-1602.
Oh, you're dangerous. Watch out. You can get a lot of calls.
I know. Or you can go to Shelly at ninjacoaching.com. That's my email, and it's SHELLY.
Perfect. Love it. Shelly, thank you so much. You're a rock star. I would always love your information, and we really appreciate you being here.